Since the fall of 2002, Bosse High School students have produced the EVSC Community Link, bringing homegrown stories to WNIN viewers. Welcome to the show. In this episode of the Community Link, we take a look at the sport and hobby of scuba diving, visit Mesker Park Zoo to drop shadow their veterinarian for an afternoon, and finish the show with a segment on the Gray Lady Ghost of Willard Library. Diving right in, senior reporter David Bland interviews a local scuba diving master instructor to learn more about how people of the tri-state are trained and certified for what some call a hobby and others call a sport.
Hello, my name is David Bland. I'm here with Larry Babcock, the master instructor and owner of Aquatech Scuba Center. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
So can you tell us a little about scuba diving or a little about yourself?
Yeah, I've been born and raised in Evansville. I've been here my entire life. I'm a Bosse graduate, and I started Aquatech in 1996 when I became an instructor. And we've been in business quite a while now, and we went to our new store about 8 years ago.
Okay, so you must really know what you're doing. So can you tell us a little about how you got started, or really what caused you to get into scuba diving?
Well, it's pretty interesting. Growing up as a kid, I wasn't a water kid, so being in the water wasn't my priority. I went to Cancun on vacation with some people, and there was a friend of mine wanted me to try scuba in Cancun, Mexico. I was reluctant because not being around the water, so she kept insisting I try it. So once I tried it, I became hooked almost immediately of what I saw down there. It's like the fish and the marine life and all the colors of the coral. And when I came back, I got certified.
Personally, I've always wanted to scuba dive, so what qualifications do I have to be able to do so?
But to get certified, you got to be 10 years of age, minimum. And you got to be halfway comfortable in the water. You don't have to be a very strong swimmer, but you got to know how to swim. Mm-hmm. And basically, that's the only criteria on getting into an entry-level scuba class.
Typically, how long does it take to get certified?
We have a weekend class. It goes for 3 weekends, and usually you start on a Saturday about 2 p.m. and goes to about 8 p.m. So we got a little bit of classroom time and also some pool time where you start developing your skills. On the third weekend, we go to a rock quarry in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, is where we do our final open water dives to where you become a certified diver. The weeknight format is for people who work weekends. That goes for 1 night a week for 5 weeks.
So if there are limited places to go around here, then why would one want to scuba dive?
Well, that's the beauty of it, that because usually when you go on vacation, people usually go to places around water anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So they can do all the classroom work and their pool work here and get their open water dives done locally. And then when they go on vacation, they can actually dive like Cozumel and Cancun and places like that, mm-hmm. where you actually can take some of your vacation time and spend it underwater.
What are some of the neatest encounters that you've had while scuba diving?
Well, this one that sticks out particularly was in Socorro Island. It's off of Cabo, Mexico. Mm-hmm. I was videotaping actually some dolphins that were below me, and then all of a sudden the sun got blocked out almost immediately. And as I looked up, I seen a 40-foot whale shark swimming overhead, and to see an animal that massive was really cool. Yeah. And got a chance to swim with him and did a lot of videotaping. Got a lot of good footage of him too.
So I know you swim with whale sharks, you swim with some dolphins, some maybe other mammals. Can you tell us about the equipment that we might need to go scuba diving? Because I see we have some equipment here today. Yeah,
sure. Your basic equipment you need is your fins. That's what propels you through the water. You got the boots for the fins. Mm-hmm. That way if you dive a little cooler water, it actually keeps you a little bit warmer.
And are those sinkable or are those floatable?
These are floatable.
Floatable?
Yeah, so they are made out of neoprene, so they're positive buoyant. So we got to have weights to offset positive buoyancy. So you want to be able to see, so we have a mask. Basically this is our window to the underwater world, we call it, to be able to see different things like that. Then we have a snorkel, in case you're on the surface, if you want to conserve air in your scuba cylinder. Mm-hmm. Now this is basically scuba. Scuba stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus because you're actually taking the air with you right here. Okay. These cylinders usually hold about 3,000 psi's of air. And this is called a regulator that you see that's mounted onto the cylinder. They call this a first stage. The reason why they call it a first stage is this is the first stage in reducing this high pressure air down to a breathable. So this is it goes to intermediate. Then it goes down to the second stage. This is a second stage. This is what you actually breathe from, and it goes to an ambient pressure. Okay. So actually you can just breathe normally. And usually you can stay down anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour with these cylinders. And this is a buoyancy compensator device. What this is, basically you wear it like a jacket, and it actually holds the cylinder, and you can put air in it to positively float on the surface, or you can fine tune it in the water to where you're neutral. As a diver, that's where we're going to be at, is neutral buoyancy, where we don't float, we don't sink. It's like flying through space.
So let's say I've signed up for the class and I've learned all about really the courses of what scuba diving is, and I learned about the equipment. Mm-hmm. What's the next step for me to get certified?
The next step, since we don't dive alone, is that you get your dive buddy to come with you. Then we'll go to the pool and let you put the equipment on and take your first breath underwater.
All right, well, let's head to the pool.
Okay. What we're going to do today is go over a few lessons on how to put the equipment on. We're going to learn how to clear water out of the mask. Have you guys ever been on scuba before? Never, right? Never. Good.
Okay, what you want to do first, put it in your mouth and exhale into it first, in case there's any water it gets pushed out. So you hold it with the right hand, put it on your mouth, and just breathe normally. Take 2 or 3 breaths.
Anytime this regulator comes out of your mouth, what happens to it? Water fills up, right? So if we just stick it back in our mouth and breathe in the water, what happens? We inhale water. So we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove it. Now in scuba diving, the most important rule in scuba is never hold your breath. The first method I'm going to show you how to clear is going to be the purge method. Okay, so what we do is we take the second stage out of our mouth, okay, we point the mouthpiece down, let small bubbles, we put it back in, and we take our tongue and we stick right in the mouthpiece. And there's a little purge right here. Hit it just quickly, okay?
Reporting from downtown YMCA for Bosse's EVSE Community Link, I'm David Bland, and this is Sydney Burkhart.
In this next segment, senior reporter Keegan Byers visits Mesker Park Zoo, where he follows veterinarian Dr. Carrie Omer for an afternoon to learn about how she cares for the zoo's animals.
I'm Keegan Byers here at Mesker Park Zoo to meet with zoo veterinarian Dr. Carrie Omer.
Hi.
Hi. She's going to be showing us what she does on a daily basis. So, Dr. Omer, where did you go to school?
So I did my undergraduate at Wittenberg University in Ohio, which is where I'm from, and then I did veterinary school at Ohio State.
And what led you to become a veterinarian?
Well, I always enjoyed having animals as pets when I was a kid, and I thought I wanted to be a high school biology teacher, and so took all the science classes during high school and all of that, and decided halfway through undergrad that just wasn't the right career path for me. And so I got a job working at a historic farm during the summers, and really fell in love with working with the animals and thought I wanted to do large animal medicine. And then I got a small animal position to kind of get more experience heading into vet school, and that kind of led me to where I am today. So this is Pico. He is a guinea pig, obviously, and he is one of our animal ambassadors here at the zoo, which basically means that he is used for educational programming, and the education department uses him here at the zoo and also takes him to schools and nursing homes and those kind of things to educate people about wild animals and all of that good stuff. He is here today because he needs a dental exam. He's been having some tooth issues lately, so we're going to check him out and address that today.
What preparation did you have to go through to become a veterinarian?
So as far as working here at the zoo, on top of just the regular coursework I took in vet school, which teaches you about all the domestic species, there were some elective classes that you could take on zoo and wildlife medicine, and so I did all of those. And then also some elective rotations, so basically practical experience during your final quarters at vet school. So I spent a month at Disney's Animal Kingdom doing preceptorship there. And then after I graduated, basically did some volunteer work at the Columbus Zoo while I was still living in Columbus doing private practice, and then I did some contract work up at the Potawatomi Zoo in South Bend, Indiana before coming here to work full time.
So since you're the only vet, do you have to rely on other people for help sometimes?
I do, absolutely. So you know, I can't know everything. That's just not possible. So the good thing is zoo veterinarians are a really tight-knit community. So you end up with connections at zoos all across the country that you can call about a problem in a certain species. And then as far as local veterinarians, I actually use a lot of local veterinarians for help as well. So when I go out of town, I have a local vet that is on call for me in case something happens while I'm away. And we also use, sometimes we'll use some equine vets in the area if we need help with either our domestic equine species in the petting zoo or the zebras. So we do definitely network with the local veterinarians to help our collection of animals.
And do you have help at the zoo, like caretakers of the animals that would help you?
Absolutely. So I have one veterinary technician that helps me with all of our routine procedures and those kind of things, and she fills in on the days that I'm not here as well during the week. And then the zookeepers are really kind of our eyes and ears when it comes to the health of the animals, because they know the animals best, and they're going to be the first ones to notice when something's wrong. So if an animal is not eating very well, or if something changes about even their weight or their stools or anything like that, they're going to be the first people that notice those things because they know the animals better than I do.
All right, since Pico's here today, what type of procedure is he going to undergo?
So Pico is basically having trouble with his teeth. And so this is a problem that Pico has struggled with for the past year probably. And what people may not realize is that guinea pigs' teeth, similar to rabbits, grow continually through their life. And so that's both the incisors, which are the front teeth, and also the cheek teeth, which are his molars and premolars. So he has one tooth that for whatever reason just doesn't line up with his other teeth appropriately. And so it continues to grow, and it gets long enough that it starts to poke into the cheek tissue, and that causes him some discomfort. And so occasionally he'll decrease how much he's eating, and he'll drool a little bit, so his chin and his neck area will get a little bit moist, and that's when we know that he's having a problem. So then we plan to anesthetize Pico today, so we'll put him completely under general anesthesia, and then we will put him on a table that allows us to open his mouth well enough to see, you know, what the problem tooth is looking like, and we can get in there with some instruments and file it down so that he's comfortable again. So helping me here today, this is Katrina. She's one of our zookeepers. So she is one of the keepers that takes care of Pico on a day-to-day basis. And then this is Dr. Diana Barber. She's our education curator. And so she is helping us out as well because this animal is used in her department from time to time.
How often does Pico need this procedure?
Well, it really kind of depends. So sometimes he can go several weeks or even up to 6 weeks between procedures. This time it's been about 3 weeks since the last time we did his teeth. They grow back pretty quickly. So what I'm doing right now is basically filing off a point that has grown on the side of the tooth. And so I have this little rasp tissue, or rasp piece of equipment here, and the tooth just kind of flakes off. So I actually have a little tiny piece of tooth there that was basically poking into the gum tissue and causing some irritation of the cheek. And so I'm not done yet, but that's kind of what we're planning on doing here.
What is Pico used for?
So he's an ambassador animal. He goes to schools, he goes to parties, he's used in our summer camp. He basically teaches kids the importance of treating animals nicely, and also he is an ambassador for his country of origin. These guys are from South America, and while they are domesticated, they are relatives of some of the wild rodents that live there that are a little different from our North American rodents that are Eurasian and African rodents.
Typically, how long does this procedure last?
It usually takes about 20 minutes from start to finish. So basically, once he's under anesthesia, we get into his mouth and we grind down the tooth that's causing the problem.
And then once we get that tooth taken care of, we look around and make sure that the rest of his teeth look okay. And then we wake him back up and he goes back to life as usual. Okay, so Pico is waking back up. You can see he can now control his head again. He's still not totally coordinated, but it takes a little bit of time. And so we will basically get him ready to go back to his home and let him go back to his day.
Now that we're done with Pico, what's next on your agenda?
So we have a bird that we're going to recheck. There's a bird from the Amazonia aviary that had an injury to her leg, and we're actually going to go and double check on her and see if we can discontinue the medication that she's been on. And so basically just a progress exam is what we would call that. So this is another one of our zookeepers. This is Chris. He helps take care of the birds here in Amazonia, and so he'll do the handling of the bird. So she actually has a microchip, and she has a band on her leg, so that's what this little yellow band is over here. So we're checking out her foot. This one toe has been the one that just has been taking its time healing, and it's still just not quite where I want it to be. So it's bleeding just a little bit right now, which is not uncommon when you have an injury like this. So she's just a little bit excited. So it looks really good. She's using it well. The other day she started actually grasping with it again, which she hadn't done for about a week. And so that's one of the ways we can kind of assess whether or not the foot is healthy and whether or not the injury is going to be resolved, is whether or not they start to have normal function of the limb again. Good, so basically right now I'm just scrubbing it up to get it nice and clean and make sure that it doesn't get contaminated where it's a little raw. And then I'll kind of wiggle the toe to see whether it still has what we call range of motion, so whether the joint still bends or not. So if we look at the normal foot, you know, she should be able to grasp with the thumb is what that toe is. And so with this foot, she's still not really grasping with that toe. She is with the other ones, which is great. So we just will need to keep her on treatment a little bit longer until we can see whether or not that toe starts to be able to grip again. Okay, and then the other thing we're going to do is just check her weight to make sure that since she's kind of been in isolation, that she's not losing weight from stress or anything like that. So we'll actually put her in this little bin to weigh her. She's too smart for us. Beautiful, thank you. Okay, so she's 58 grams. She was 55 grams when we first got started with treating her. So that's one of the ways we can assess and make sure that she's not too stressed out by being in that different situation. So we'll put her back in the Howdy cage, which is a place where she can interact with the other birds in the aviary, but still be treated separately and medicated separately. And then reassess her in a few more days to see whether she can be released at that point.
Thanks for everything you do for our community and the zoo.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
All right. Reporting from Mesker Park Zoo, for Bosse's EVSC Community Link, I'm Keegan Byers.
Our last segment takes us to Evansville's Willard Library in search of information about the Gray Lady ghost that is said to haunt the grounds and its halls.
My name is Greg Hager. I'm the director of Willard Library, and Willard has so many great stories surrounding its history, but our most favorite story is probably the legend of the Gray Lady. The Gray Lady is a famous library ghost, now the world's most famous library ghost, and she was first seen in 1937. So there's some history behind the ghost. From 1937, our custodian at the time was tasked with coming into the building very early in the morning and stoking the coal-fired furnace for the upcoming day. And it was during one of these trips in, very early in the morning, that he encountered in the basement a figure, and he would go on to describe this figure as being female in a Victorian-style dress, standing in front of the coal-fired furnace. Now, he could not see this person's face. He described a veil or a gauzy material covering her face, but he realized when his flashlight beam was passing through her that he was encountering a ghost. And so in the words of the day in 1937, he shortly thereafter took to drink and saw the ghost fairly regularly after that. And he is the only employee to leave the employment of Willard Library and cite as his reason for doing so, always seeing the ghost and having nobody believe him. When the Gray Lady is seen, she's described as wearing indeed a gray Victorian clothing, a dress, a long dress, high-top Victorian shoes, often described as having something covering her face, like a veil. She's accompanied by the smell of very, very strong and very cheap perfume. When people have encountered her, they've also reported a feeling immense cold. And some people who have encountered the Gray Lady have not been worried about that encounter at all, and others have been, quite shaken by the experience. Some people have suggested that it's Louise Carpenter, who is the daughter of Willard Carpenter, the library founder. She did actually sue the library over her father's estate, and she did lose that lawsuit. Some people say because she, had that grudge against the library, that she is the person, the ghost that's haunting Willard Library. Others have said that's nonsense, and that she's, not at all connected with the Carpenter family, and that maybe she's even connected with the land that the library sits on. And paranormal investigators have claimed that there are up to 8 to 9 different entities haunting the building. Older men, indeed a female figure, children, and even some reports of a ghost cat. We always have an annual paranormal investigation. We do try to always do that in October of each year, and the teams come in and they all do their own thing. They all do different things. Some shoot in infrared, some take still pictures. Most shoot video at some point. Some people really get into the electric voice phenomena, EVP. Others tend to measure electromagnetic activity in the building, and there are places in the building that have massive fluctuations in that electromagnetic activity. So a paranormal investigator kind of points to that and says that indicates a ghost or a haunting, and it's up to the individual investigation team as to how they want to approach an investigation.
I saw 2 big, huge orbs. I was facing this way, and I saw them with my naked eyes, and I just completely freaked out. They just came in, and then blink, they went off. 2 of them, the size of basketballs. And I said, did anybody see that? And Mike Hollinshead, the guy who's downstairs right now, said, yeah, he saw him in that mirror. So I was like, thank God, I'm not going nuts. And then in 2006, I was standing right over there, probably right where he is, but maybe about 4 feet that way. Something grabbed my arm. Something ran up, grabbed my arm, and swung it back like this. And there was a lady standing about this far from me who's not here tonight, Belinda. And I did exactly what they do on TV. I said, what the hell? And then I looked up at the ceiling thinking something dropped on me. But the only way I can describe is it felt like somebody grabbed my arm.
I'm a skeptic. I'm willing to keep an open mind. I'll believe something if I see something. I haven't actually seen a ghost in Willard Library or anywhere. But I did have an encounter, if you will, an experience, in which I was waiting for our annual board meeting to start. This was would have been in mid-May, so nice bright day. The library was closed on that particular day, but I was expecting board members to arrive for this meeting, so I was sitting in the meeting room going over my notes, and the building was very, very still, very quiet, because there wasn't really anybody in here. And I heard what I would describe as footsteps coming across the wooden floor on the second floor. And you can definitely hear movement on that floor, especially when the building is very quiet. I waited for the board member, I thought, to come into the room. And when nobody did, I got up to see who it was and see if, make sure they didn't need something. And there was nobody on the floor. So I went downstairs to the first floor and found the administrative assistant and asked her, did you come up to the second floor for any reason? And she looked at me very strangely and said, no. I said, well, maybe I had a Gray Lady experience. The Gray Lady has been most often seen in the library basement, but most often in the children's department in the library basement. There've definitely been the most encounters and sightings, particularly from a few of the different children's librarians in our history. Margaret Mayer saw the ghost quite frequently. In fact, frequently enough that it wasn't even anything special to her. She just regarded seeing the ghost as like seeing a friend or another employee. And our present children's librarian has had some interesting experiences. And I would love to invite you to come downstairs and see what we're talking about in the children's department.
My name is Rhonda Mort. I'm the children's librarian at Willard Library, and my most recent experience in the children's room was we had a jar kind of fly across the desk. I was sitting in the office with my back to my coworker. She was sitting at the front desk, and all of a sudden we heard this loud crash. And we both turned around and noticed that there was a large plastic jar on the floor that had been on the desk, but for some reason it just kind of flew off the desk. And we tried to explain it away with, oh, maybe there was a burst of air from the door, or maybe there was things that happened, but there was no real explanation. Just as this happened, my boss, Greg Hager, went past the door, and he came in to see what happened and caught Miss Anita and myself staring at each other with perplexed looks on our faces. And he asked us what happened. And this happened just last month, about 2 weeks ago, right before October started. It was probably like the last couple of days of September. Just as recently as 2014, which I really did not believe in the ghost until this point, because I always said that seeing is believing, and if I saw the gray lady, then I would begin to believe that the gray lady was actually here. Well, in 2014, in the fall, I was shelving books in another part of the library, and my coworker had kind of a panicky tone in her voice, and she called me over to the cameras and she pointed at the camera and she said, "Rhonda, what do you see?" And when I looked, I really couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I said, "I don't know, what do you see?" But standing by the back door there, the glass back door, there was the figure of a woman, and she was a complete figure. She was dressed in old-fashioned clothing. She had her hair up, and she was very beautiful. I would say between the ages of 14 and 22, somewhere in there. And it was hard to tell, but she had a rather sad, pensive look on her face in profile. And we both just stared at the cameras for a little while longer, and then I asked my coworker, "Is that her?" And she just nodded her head. She didn't say anything, and we were still staring. Well, as we were staring at the monitor, the figure at the door turned and looked into the camera. And when she did that, that's what convinced me that it was the gray lady, because when she stared into the camera, her face completely disappeared. And upon that happening, the coworker turned to me and said, "Miss Rhonda, I have a half day coming and I'm leaving." So she left me there with the gray lady that day. Nothing else happened. It was a very peaceful day. And since 2014, I tell people that yes, I do believe something is here.
The gray lady has never actually been identified or caught on live television, but there have been many clues to say she is there. Some people have felt like this is her library, and the workers feel as they are visitors there. So who is the gray lady? Is she real, or is it overactive imaginations? Will we ever actually identify her? The world may never know.
We hope you enjoyed the show. Tune in next month for a new episode of Bosse High School's EVSC Community Link. We would like to extend a special thanks to the following businesses and organizations for providing their services: Gerald and Leanne Scott, Sharon Adams with Timeless Photography, in the Acropolis Mediterranean Restaurant. This has been a Bulldog production.